On this Manna Machine Alert, we bring to you a very interesting discovery coming out of Tuscany. A group of statues has been found there that dates from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD. On this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. What do we got for us today? Is very, very interesting. It doesn't relate directly to the Bible, but it's a very interesting archaeology story.
Well, it is part of the ancient cultures.
Yes, it is, definitely. What we have here is a very interesting site and a very interesting discovery.
And just a really fun story.
Oh, it's a very fun story. It's a very fun story. It takes place at the site of San Casciano Dei Bagni in Italy.
And a note to our listeners, which they've probably picked up, neither David nor I speak Italian.
Yeah.
So apologies on the mangling.
Yeah, we're going to mangle some names here. That's for sure.
But the heading on the story says, Village Garbage Man helped unearth ancient bronze statues in Tuscany.
And this was published on June 4th in Apple News. So this is a summary of the excavation that was done there. And it's following report of these statues being put on display. Now, we should summarize what was found there and how it was found, because that is just as interesting. The article says it's one of Italy's most remarkable archaeological finds in decades. And essentially, they excavate this site, and they found about 24 Etruscan and Roman statues there that are pulled from the mud in Tuscany. So that's remarkable. That they have never had a find of 24 statues.
And they're bronze statues.
That's
important as well.
Yeah. They date to the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD. And they're extracted from the ruins of an ancient spa. And after being conserved, they're going to go on display in Rome's Quirinale Palace from June 22nd. So this is going to be a very, very public display in short order.
Yes, the statues were found in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah.
So it's not a new discovery. What the news story is they are making their public appearance.
Now, here's one of the interesting bits about how they were discovered. This is actually part of an ongoing excavation.
Yes.
They started this excavation in 2019 and found nothing except for the remains of some minor walls.
The article actually says that the head archaeologist said his team was getting rather desperate. They were not finding what they had hoped to find.
Yeah. Now, they had expected to find something there. And this often happens in archaeology, where you get a clue from a text and you start hunting for the site. But you don't know exactly where it is. Got some guesses, and we're going to put up a photo of San Casciano Dei Bagni up on screen here. It's not a big place. It's not a big site.
It's one of the rural communities in Italy. And this is very exciting for them because so many rural communities in Italy are experiencing depopulation. Most of the young people, the younger families, are all leaving the rural areas and going to the cities where there's work. So because this is a find here, they are hoping this will draw attention and some tourist income back into their little community.
Now, it's important to note that their little community is on a hilltop. So, when you've got a site on a hilltop, there isn't much place to look. So, yeah, I can see why they're getting desperate here. They've gotten a clue that there's something on this hilltop. They're exploring this hilltop and not finding anything.
And the article starts off crediting the find thanks in part to the intuition of a retired garbage man.
Yeah. Now, this particular garbage man, he's also an amateur local historian. His name is Stefano Petrini. And he knows the lay of the land there. He picks up garbage. That's what he does. And he had a flash of intuition, the article says, remembering that years earlier he had seen bits of an ancient Roman column on a wall on the other side of the public bath.
Now, what's interesting is these columns could only be seen from an abandoned garden that had once belonged to his friend, San Casciano's late greengrocer, who grew fruit and vegetables there to sell in the village shop. So this is a local team effort that found these.
Yeah, very much so. It's a great combination of archaeologists cooperating with the locals. So, when you hear these stories, they're absolutely wonderful. So, the San Casciano archaeological project, they admitted that they were coming up empty. So I guess one day, they talked to Petrini and he pointed out that, hey, there's some Roman ruins, in this old garden. And the archaeologists pick up and move to that area and start digging there. And what they found there was phenomenal. And we'll put up some pictures of some of the stuff they find as we read about this. But one of the interesting things about this is it is a hybrid site. It covers between the Etruscan and Roman periods, and there seems to be continuity between the Etruscan and Roman culture at this site. Now that's really unusual. You'll find Etruscan sites or you'll find Roman sites. You won't seem to find continuity. So that's going to be very, very important to informing our knowledge of that transition. Now, one of the things about that transition that's very interesting is you got a transition of language too. Not just a transition of culture, it's a transition of language. And Etruscan has been deciphered, and there are many Etruscan texts. So we can read the Etruscan texts.
So it's very clear that it is hybrid.
It's very clear that it's a hybrid site.
Now, what they found was interesting.
Yes.
They are thinking that perhaps not only was this a spa, but they think it might be a temple to a god of health.
Yes, and that is not an unreasonable conclusion here. It's not an unreasonable conclusion first because it is a spa. Now, we have to understand that spas differ in some respect to baths. Now, the Romans did believe heavily that baths were important for maintaining good health and hygiene. Okay? But there's more going on here because a spa has a natural hot water supply as opposed to a bath that has to create a false floor and run a furnace underneath the pool to heat the water.
Now, this is a mineral spa as well.
It's a mineral spa.
For anyone who hasn't been to a mineral spa, it smells like rotten Easter eggs. It's not necessarily the most pleasant experience. And if you go into these waters, which are often mud baths, you too will smell like a rotten Easter egg for about a week.
And that's the kind of spa we have here, is a mud spa. Now, one of the things about a mud spa too is if you go into water that's too hot, you really feel it. With a mud spa, one of the properties of hot mud is the temperature can be higher and you're less likely to feel it. So you can do this without getting burned, scalded.
One comment I do want to make on this whole modern dismissal of cultures who believed in magic, there was frequently actual sound medical practice behind some of these things. And the fact that it was a mud spa would mean a lot of people felt better.
Yes. It has been effective for people with arthritis. People who have arthritis often say that they feel better after partaking in a mud spa. That's a common claim. There's also the fact, too, that spas have had a reputation for promoting good health for thousands of years. This is not unique to the Romans or the Etruscans. Even up into the 19th and 20th centuries, mud spas still remain around for therapeutic purposes.
Yes. Today.
Today, yeah, absolutely.
Palm Springs has a very notable.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, because of that connection between spas and health, it is then not surprising that there would be a temple to a god of health there. Now, what we find here is among the statues, and some of them are very remarkable. There's a 35-inch high sculpture of a scrawny bronze boy found there. And there's even an inscription on this statue. Apparently, it's of the Roman era, and his name was Marcius Gabrilo. So we even know who this is from. And it looks like the young Roman boy has some sort of bone disease.
Yeah, the article says that when the statue was first pulled from the mud, it was covered and just partially showing, and it initially looked like a bronze of an athlete. And then as they began cleaning the statue, they saw the signs of disease that had been sculpted into it.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that this was a site of healing.
Yes. They also found coins and sculptures of body parts like ears and feet that were in the mud of that site. And that's very, very significant for health cults. There's some suggestion in the article that these were given to be offerings to the god of health, but there's also another thing too that we also find in a lot of cults of the whole Mediterranean basin, which is that when you see sculptures of ears, it typically is used as an amulet or as a offering for the god to hear your prayers. And this would make sense too because of the offerings of coins as well.
Yes.
So these don't seem to be coins that were just accidentally left. These were offerings given to the local gods as an appeal for healing.
And the ears would be an amulet asking the gods to hear.
Yeah. One of the excavators, Salvi, said they also found unusual offerings, including eggshells, pine cones, kernels from peaches and plums, surgical tools, and even a 2,000-year-old lock of curly hair. So one of the things that we also have to understand too is that these sort of mud spas have great preservation.
Yes.
They have great preservation. So this is a very, very interesting site because a lot of the stuff, eggshells are very ephemeral. They don't last.
They don't last in your home.
They don't last in your home, no. Okay, peach and plum pits, yeah, okay, they will last. But something as soft as an eggshell do not normally survive.
And the article continues that this opens a window into the nexus between health, religion, and spirituality of that time period.
The thing is, too, that they're not done with this excavation. This is an ongoing excavation. And it says here in the article that they will resume the excavations in June. And another excavator, Mariotti, said, quote, "It is a certainty," end quote, "that more will be found in the coming years. Possibly even another 6 or 12 statues with inscriptions." And he comments, quote, "We've only just lifted the lid," end quote. So that's super exciting. So this is a real find. They got 24 statues already, and they're going.
So the statues that have already been found are going in a well-known museum in Rome.
Yeah.
These other statues that they might be finding, they're actually hoping to open a small museum in that little city itself.
Yeah.
To bring in some tourist trade, to bring in some hope for the people who live there.
Yeah.
To bring some life into their community again.
Yeah, and I think that's really good that an excavation gives back to its local community. I think it's really important.
This is an
particularly if that local community has the means and the desire to preserve those finds and preserve their local history.
and this is an excellent example of how
Yeah.
archaeologists should work.
Yeah, this is the ideal of how archaeologists should work.
This is not a group of robbers coming in,
Yeah.
stealing from the locals.
I recognize, and there's a tension here. And I recognize that that's not always possible.
Yes.
If you have to do war zone archaeology, that's a very different sort of deal, where the local population may not be prepared to take on the burden of preservation.
Yes, and you also have the opposite. There's a lot of archaeologists who are fighting to preserve, where the locals want to plow everything over and build hotels, build highways, and
Banana orchards.
yeah,
This is one of the things we encounter in Egypt. Sometimes we will find important archaeological discoveries on land that, say, the local population wants to convert to banana plantations.
but you will hear worldwide a lot of archaeologists who are groaning because they've been given 6 weeks to see if something's there, and that's it. And then it's
Yeah.
all going to be paved over, and they won't be able to touch it ever
Well,
again.
I mean, there's an issue right now going on in Cairo. The government wants to plow down the City of the Dead to put in a freeway. Now, the City of the Dead is a large Islamic period cemetery. It houses, say, local Islamic nobility in tombs. So the government in Cairo wants to pave that over, put in a freeway. So there is this tension between progress and preserving the past.
Yes.
But this story that we have here from Italy, from Tuscany, is a wonderful example of, say, the local population and external archaeologists cooperating to preserve local history.
And I love how they end the article.
Yeah, it's a great ending to this article. And Petrini says, quote, "Important things always happen thanks to several people, never thanks to only one. Never." That's a great way to end this. Okay, so that sums up our Manna Machine Alert today. A great discovery from Italy featuring 24 bronze statues from the Etruscan 3rd century BC period to the Roman 1st century AD. So we hope you enjoyed this Manna Machine Alert. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.